Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be tackling something, well, it's spooky and scientifically intriguing.
Ooh, I like that.
The question is, could ghosts actually be evidence of parallel universes?
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
We've got some pretty cool sources to help us unpack this. We've got excerpts from some academic papers on cosmology.
Always a good place to start.
Then we've got a website article all about ghost hunting.
Well,
and
there's more.
Yeah. And even a blog post that goes deep into ghosts and quantum theory.
This is going to be good.
It is. I'm excited.
You know what I love about this?
Hmm.
We're not just sitting around telling ghost stories here. You've brought some serious science and philosophy to the table with these sources. We could end up completely changing how we think about ghosts and the universe itself by the time we're done.
That's the goal. So to get us started, let's talk about The Anomaly by Lee Smolin. This book has some mind-blowing ideas about the universe, specifically the idea that black holes could actually give birth to brand new universes.
Oh yeah, Smolin's hypothesis. He suggests that when a black hole collapses, it doesn't just disappear into a singularity. Instead, the intense quantum effects that are happening there could cause a kind of bounce. Some people call it the Big Bounce. And it creates a new, expanding universe, kind of like a daughter universe with echoes of its parent universe.
Oh, okay. So instead of one universe, we might actually have an infinite number of universes branching out.
Like a cosmic family tree.
Exactly. And each one is slightly different, right? So maybe there are even versions of ourselves out there living completely different lives.
It's a wild thought, right?
It is. But how does this all connect back to ghosts?
Well, imagine if these daughter universes aren't totally separate from our own. What if they, overlap or intersect in subtle ways? This is where that idea of ghosts as interdimensional travelers comes in. From that Are Ghosts Proof of Parallel Universes article.
Oh, yeah. That article basically suggests that what we see as ghosts could be beings from these other universes, and they're somehow bleeding through into our reality. It's always been such a fascinating idea to me, but is it really possible?
It definitely captures the imagination, but it runs into some snags when we try to line it up with the laws of physics as we know them. Think about light for a second.
Okay.
The farther you move away from a light source, the dimmer it gets.
Right, because the light spreads out as it travels.
Exactly. It follows something called the inverse square law.
Okay, that sounds familiar, vaguely.
Basically, the inverse square law is based on the idea that light travels in 3 dimensions.
Right.
But if a ghost was really a being from another dimension, its light would have to be traveling through a 4th dimension to reach us.
Okay.
And if that were happening, the light wouldn't diminish the same way at all.
Interesting.
We wouldn't see ghosts as these faint images. They'd be practically invisible.
Okay, so maybe ghosts aren't interdimensional beings then. But that ghost hunting article brought up something else interesting. It said that ghosts are often spotted in places with a history of violence or suffering. Do you think that tells us anything about what kind of energy they might be?
It's a popular theory that ghosts are tied to these emotionally charged events. And it's a really interesting observation. But it's important to remember that most of these accounts are anecdotal. We're talking about human perception, memory, and we just don't know what might happen after death. It's hard to draw really solid conclusions without some hard scientific evidence.
True. Okay, well, speaking of things we don't fully understand, let's talk about that ghosts and quantum theory blog post.
Oh yeah, here we go.
This one is where things get really mind-bending. It talks about the idea that consciousness might not be just a product of our physical brains. What if it's actually rooted in quantum information?
Quantum information.
Yeah, quantum information that's stored within these tiny structures called microtubules in our brain cells.
Okay, I see where this is going. This is getting into some of the really cool ideas from physicists like Hameroff and Penrose. They suggest that consciousness actually lives in this quantum information, and that this information could even persist after death.
Seriously, so you're saying that maybe our consciousness isn't limited to our bodies at all? What if there's a quantum part of us that survives after death and maybe even interacts with our world in ways that we just don't understand yet? Could that be what we're seeing as ghosts?
It's definitely a thought-provoking idea. And quantum physics really is a place where the normal rules of physics break down. It's a world of uncertainty and possibilities. And even though this theory of quantum consciousness is still pretty speculative, it opens up some incredible avenues for exploration. There's just so much we still don't know about consciousness and how it interacts with the physical world.
It's amazing. It really makes you wonder what other mysteries are hidden within the quantum realm. It's also amazing to think that even ancient texts, like the Bible, have stories that could be hinting at dimensions beyond what we normally perceive.
You're right. Like the story of Elisha's servant seeing fiery chariots coming down from the sky, people often interpret that as a sign that there are realms or beings beyond our ordinary senses. It's a concept that philosophers and scientists have been wrestling with for centuries.
It is fascinating how those ancient stories seem to resonate with some of the most cutting-edge scientific theories we have today. But let's switch gears a bit and talk about something I read in John Kachuba's book, Ghost Hunters. He brings up Einstein's law of energy conservation and suggests that it could be relevant to the whole ghost phenomenon.
Ah, yes, Kachuba's argument. Since energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed, what happens to a person's energy after they die? Does it just vanish? Or could it persist in some form? Maybe even as a ghostly presence?
That's exactly it. That energy has to go somewhere, right? So maybe it transforms into something we just can't fully perceive or measure yet.
It's a compelling thought. But even though the law of energy conservation is a fundamental principle in physics, applying it to the existence of ghosts is a pretty big leap. We just don't have any scientific evidence to support the claim that human energy turns into a ghost after death.
Fair enough. But then there's this whole other mystery. Remember that our parallel universe is real article.
Yeah, what about it?
Well, it talks about how galaxies seem to be rotating faster than they should based on everything we know about gravity. Isn't that weird?
It is, and it's a big puzzle. It's why scientists have proposed the existence of dark matter. It's this hypothetical form of matter that doesn't interact with light, so we can't see it, but it still has a gravitational force, kind of like there's a hidden universe interwoven with our own, and it's pulling on the galaxies we can see.
Whoa, so we're talking about another dimension impacting our own, just like some theories suggest for ghosts.
An interesting parallel, isn't it? Some physicists have actually theorized that the extra gravity we're seeing could be coming from the pull of parallel universes. But here's the catch. Just like the light from interdimensional ghosts, if gravity was acting across dimensions, we'd see a different relationship between distance and gravitational force. And we don't.
Wow, so we've gone from the tiny world of quantum physics to the massive scale of galaxies, all in just a few minutes. This is why I love these deep dives. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know.
You said it. It's so tempting to look for simple answers to these big, complicated questions. But the universe just loves to keep things interesting.
It really does.
There's always more to discover, more layers to uncover.
I can't wait to dive into more in part 2. Stay tuned, everyone. It's like we're putting together this huge cosmic puzzle, but half the pieces are missing.
Yeah.
And even the ones we do have don't quite seem to fit.
I like that analogy, the cosmic jigsaw puzzle. It really does feel like that sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It speaks to just how complex the universe is and how much we still don't know.
Totally. It's kind of frustrating, but also exciting, right? Like, we've been asking these same questions about ghosts and consciousness and the afterlife for centuries, and we still don't have any definitive answers.
It shows how deeply curious we are as humans. We have this drive to understand the world around us, even the things that seem completely beyond our reach.
Yeah, it's like this innate drive. And sometimes those things that seem impossible, like the idea of ghosts, they can actually lead us down some pretty unexpected paths, you know?
That's true.
Maybe the act of questioning is even more important than finding the answers.
You know, I think you're onto something there. When you really think about it, the scientific method is all about questioning, testing and revising what we think we know, based on the evidence we find. Even when we don't get those concrete answers, that process of inquiry still helps us learn and grow. It pushes us to think in new ways.
So where do we go from here? We've talked about the multiverse, quantum physics, ancient beliefs. What other avenues are there for understanding ghosts?
Well, one area that often gets overlooked is human perception and psychology. Okay.
Our brains are incredibly complex, and they can sometimes play tricks on us, especially when we're dealing with something as slippery and subjective as ghosts.
That's true. I remember reading about pareidolia, where our brains try to find familiar patterns like faces in random shapes, or those auditory illusions, where you hear voices or music and just random noise. Could that be happening with some ghost sightings?
Absolutely. Our brains are constantly trying to make sense of the world, and sometimes they fill in the blanks with information that's not actually there, especially when we're feeling heightened emotions, like fear or anticipation. We might be more likely to misinterpret what our senses are telling us.
So if you're already scared and you're in, like, a creepy old house, a creaking floorboard could easily sound like footsteps, or a flickering light could seem like a ghostly apparition.
Exactly. It's your brain trying to create a story that fits the situation. And don't forget about the power of suggestion. If you've heard stories about a place being haunted, you're more likely to go in expecting to see something, which can unconsciously influence how you perceive things. That reminds me of those ghost hunting shows, where they use all that fancy equipment and create this really spooky atmosphere. It's like they're setting people up to have a paranormal experience.
They're creating the perfect conditions for the brain to misinterpret things and attribute it to something supernatural. And here's the thing, even if someone genuinely believes they've seen a ghost, it doesn't necessarily mean it was a supernatural entity. It could have been a bunch of things: sensory illusions, psychological factors, environmental cues.
So are you saying that you don't believe in ghosts?
I'm saying we need to be careful about jumping to conclusions, especially when we're just relying on anecdotal evidence and personal experiences. The human brain is a powerful thing, and it can sometimes create its own reality. But that doesn't mean we should just dismiss the possibility of something beyond our current understanding.
So we're back to the mystery again. What do we do with all those unexplained experiences, all those stories people tell where they swear it's true? Do we just chalk it up to tricks of the mind? Or is there still something more to explore?
That's the beauty of it all. We keep exploring, keep questioning, keep testing. Science is a never-ending process of discovery. We might never have all the answers, but it's the journey itself that's so fascinating. It's about pushing the boundaries of our knowledge and staying open to new possibilities, even if they challenge everything we think we know.
I love that. So even if we never definitively prove or disprove the existence of ghosts, we've still gained something valuable from this deep dive.
Right.
We've stretched our minds, considered different perspectives, and maybe even rekindled a bit of that wonder and curiosity within ourselves.
That's what it's all about.
This has been such a great conversation so far, but before we wrap things up, there's one more thing I want to touch on. Something I find really captivating about this whole topic. This whole topic, it really makes you think about what it means to be human, you know?
In what way?
Well, we're these curious creatures who are constantly searching for meaning, always trying to figure out our place in the universe. And ghost stories, whether we believe them or not, they tap into this deep need to explore the mysteries of life and death.
I agree. It's a really fascinating aspect of this.
Like, we crave that connection to something bigger than ourselves, something beyond the physical world. And maybe, just maybe, these stories give us a way to do that. Even if they're not literally true, they let us imagine what could be out there.
That's a good point. It's about the possibilities.
Exactly.
They're like metaphors for our hopes and fears and uncertainties about life and death and all the mysteries of the universe.
So after all this, all the theories and stories and mind-bending concepts, what's the takeaway for our listeners? What do we do with all this information?
Well, I think the most important thing is to approach these questions with an open mind, but also with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Balance, right.
Yeah. It's great to be fascinated by the unknown and explore different possibilities, but we also need to be critical thinkers. Evaluate the evidence carefully and not jump to conclusions based on just personal stories.
It's easy to get swept up in it all.
Oh, for sure, especially with something like this.
We don't want to shut down the wonder and the awe, though, but we also don't want to fall for things that aren't true.
Exactly. Finding that balance is key. Ultimately, it's about the pursuit of knowledge and understanding. Whether we're talking about the cosmos or consciousness or life after death, that journey of exploration is what's really valuable.
It's about expanding our horizons.
And challenging our assumptions about the world.
I love that. So even if we never really know for sure if ghosts exist, we've still gained something from this deep dive.
Absolutely.
We've stretched our minds, considered new ideas, maybe even sparked a little bit of wonder in ourselves.
That's a great way to put it.
So as we wrap up, I'm left with this thought. What if the real question isn't whether ghosts exist or not, but what they represent to us as humans?
What do you mean?
Like, what do they tell us about ourselves, our hopes, our fears, our fascination with the unknown?
That's a really interesting question. Something to think about for sure.
Maybe the next time you hear a weird noise in the night, or get a chill down your spine for no reason, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Instead, think of it as a chance to explore your own imagination and all the mysteries the universe holds.
I like that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never lose that sense of wonder.